The first time I saw the Witch's Brew, the place had popped up overnight. One day there was an empty storefront, glass smudged with neglect and age, and the next morning there it was, neon sign glowing blood red against the October mist, tendrils of fog clinging to the dark windows like fingers unwilling to let go. It was perfect timing. Halloween was just around the corner, and this place had a theme. Witches, dark magic. I smirked as I passed by that first time. Gimmicks like that were common around this time of year. Everyone was looking for a thrill, something to break the monotony. Hell, I was one of them. The bell above the door tinkled like bones clattering together when I stepped inside. It smelled odd. Not like the usual assault of coffee beans roasting or the sweet baked goods I'd expect in a place like this. No, it was more earthy, damp almost. The air felt thick as if the room had inhaled, holding its breath. A woman stood behind the counter. Her back was turned to me, hair dark as night, coiled like a storm. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there, hunched slightly, as if she was waiting for something, or maybe someone. I cleared my throat. Coffee, right? My voice echoed in the stillness. The woman turned slowly. Her face was sharp, angular, and her eyes too dark, too deep. They locked onto me, held me like prey, and for a moment I couldn't speak, couldn't move. It was as if those eyes knew things I'd rather forget. "The Witch's Brew," she said softly, the words hanging heavy in the air. "That's what you're here for." It wasn't a question. I opened my mouth to say no, to ask for a regular coffee, but something in me hesitated. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe I just didn't want to seem like I was afraid of a damn drink. "Yeah," I said finally. "Sure, why not?" She nodded, slow and deliberate, and turned to the back, her hands moving over jars and vials that I hadn't noticed before. There were no familiar coffee machines, no grinders or brewers. Just a table with mismatched containers, some of them covered in strange symbols, others oozing a faint green mist. The brew came in a small black cup. No steam rose from the surface, but the liquid inside was a deep, swirling crimson. It looked like blood. "Drink," she whispered, sliding the cup across the counter. I hesitated. There was something wrong here, something off. But the room felt different now. The walls seemed closer, the air colder, and those dark eyes, her eyes, watched me from behind the counter, unblinking, waiting. I took a sip. The liquid was warm, surprisingly sweet, and for a moment I relaxed. It was good. Better than good, really. The flavors hit the back of my throat, coating my tongue with a richness I hadn't expected. It made me feel lighter, free. "Your desires," the woman murmured, "will reveal themselves soon." Before I could ask what the hell she meant, the door opened, and another customer entered. I left without a word, my mind buzzing, my heart pounding in my chest for reasons I couldn't explain. By the time I got home, the strange feeling had faded. I'd chalked it up to the weird atmosphere, the creepiness of the shop. It was Halloween season, after all. People liked to be scared. It was all in good fun. But that night, I woke to the sound of someone breathing. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, a remnant of some forgotten dream. I turned over, pulling the blanket tighter around me, telling myself it was nothing. Then it came again. A slow, rasping breath, too close, too real. It wasn't coming from the hallway or the street outside my window. It was in my room. Just behind me, I froze, my body locking up in terror. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel sweat prickling the back of my neck. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to see what was standing there, watching me in the dark. But I had to. Slowly, I shifted, my eyes adjusting to the gloom, and that's when I saw it. No, her. The woman from the coffee shop, standing at the foot of my bed, her dark eyes locked on mine. But her face, it wasn't right. Her skin was stretched too tight, her mouth twisted into a grin that was too wide, too sharp, like a gash across her face. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat closed up, my body refusing to obey. She didn't move, just stood there, watching, grinning. I don't remember how long I stayed like that, frozen in terror, my heart racing, my breath shallow. But when I blinked just once, she was gone. The room was empty again, save for the faint whisper of wind outside my window. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Couldn't. By morning, I'd convinced myself it had been a dream, a product of my overactive imagination. Maybe I'd just had too much of that strange brew. But when I looked in the mirror, there was something wrong. My reflection stared back at me, but my eyes, they weren't mine. They were too dark, too deep, just like hers. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror longer than I wanted to admit, inspecting my eyes, tracing the edges of my face as if looking for cracks. They seemed normal enough, at least now in the daylight. The dark circles under them could easily be blamed on lack of sleep. Anyone would have trouble resting after what I saw, or what I thought I saw. It had to be some kind of hallucination. Maybe the drink was stronger than I realized. Maybe there was something in it. I laughed to myself, shaking off the unease. People were into all kinds of weird, trendy brews now. Mushroom coffee, ayahuasca lattes, who knows? Probably just a bad trip. Still, a feeling clung to me, like cobwebs in the corners of my mind. Even after showering and getting dressed, I couldn't shake the unease. Her face, the way it had twisted into something monstrous, kept replaying behind my eyes, especially when I closed them for too long. I didn't tell anyone about it, though. I knew how it would sound. But it wasn't until I got back to work that things started to feel off again. It began small, just enough to gnaw at my sanity. My computer glitched as soon as I logged on, flickering, the screen going black for a moment before coming back on. I shrugged it off. Tech issues weren't uncommon. Then I noticed that my inbox was flooded with emails, but not the usual barrage of work tasks. They were empty. No subject, no body text, no sender. Just dozens of blank messages piling up one after another, a steady stream of nothing. "Hey, you okay?" my coworker Marcus asked. His voice made me flinch. I looked over, forcing a smile. "Yeah, fine, just weird email stuff." Spam's been crazy lately. It will handle it." He leaned closer, squinting at my face. "You don't look so great, though. Everything good?" "Didn't sleep well," I said quickly, avoiding his gaze. His concern was genuine, but the longer he looked at me, the more uncomfortable I felt. Like his eyes were peeling away the layers of my skin, digging into something deeper. He grunted, gave me a nod, and turned back to his desk. I went back to staring at the computer screen, but every time I tried to focus, I felt someone's gaze on me, not Marcus. No, it was that familiar feeling, the one from last night. The room around me felt heavier, the air thicker again, like something was pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I glanced up, scanning the office. Nothing unusual. Everyone was in their own world, tapping away on keyboards, making small talk, completely oblivious. But the feeling wouldn't leave me. I could almost hear the soft rasp of breath behind me again, like before. I swiveled in my chair, my heart hammering in my chest. There, in the corner of the room, standing by the filing cabinets, she was there. The woman from the coffee shop. Her back was to me, her head tilted just slightly, as though she was waiting for me to notice her. I blinked and she was gone. I shot out of my chair, drawing a few startled looks from my coworkers. I mumbled some excuse about needing a break and rushed out of the office, barely noticing Marcus calling after me. The second I hit the street, the fresh air filled my lungs and I leaned against the building, trying to steady myself. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Without thinking, I pulled it out and unlocked the screen. New message. The text was from an unknown number, but it was short, 2 words that sent ice running through my veins. "Keep drinking." I swallowed hard, feeling my pulse quicken. My first instinct was to delete the message, but something stopped me. Curiosity? Fear? I wasn't sure anymore. My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before I finally tapped the reply button. "Who is this?" I typed, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Seconds passed, then minutes. No response. I pocketed the phone, hands trembling slightly. I needed to go back to the witch's brew. That's where it all started, wasn't it? The woman, the drink, the strange things happening ever since. It had to be connected. I needed answers. The walk there felt longer this time, like the streets had stretched out beneath my feet. Every corner shrouded in the same creeping mist I'd seen that first morning. As I approached the shop, my heart sank. The neon sign was gone. The windows were boarded up, dust and grime thick on the planks. The door was sealed shut. The entire place looked abandoned, had been abandoned for years by the look of it. But that was impossible. I had just been there the day before. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and pulled up the GPS, trying to make sense of the surreal scene. But the GPS didn't even register the shop's existence. No name, no listing. No, the witch's brew. Panic clawed at my throat and I backed away, my mind racing, my breathing growing shallow. Had I imagined it? Was it all just some twisted, elaborate hallucination? Just as I turned to leave, a voice, raspy, like a whisper in the back of my mind, cut through the silence. "You drank the brew." I froze, the words reverberating through my skull. Slowly I turned around. The woman stood at the end of the block, half shrouded in the mist, her face twisted in that same horrible grin, her eyes black pits of nothingness. She raised her hand, pointing directly at me. "Your desires will become your curse." And then, just like before, she vanished. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Whatever I had done, whatever I had unleashed, it wasn't just going away. It was following me, and it was only going to get worse. Because deep down I knew the truth. The woman, the coffee shop, it hadn't been about granting desires. No, it was something darker. And I had already taken the first step into hell. I spent the next few days trying to convince myself I was losing my mind. I avoided the witch's brew, or whatever the hell it was, or wasn't, and went through the motions. Work? home. Repeat. But every moment was punctuated by that gnawing feeling. It sat in my chest like a weight I couldn't shake, like something had crawled inside and decided to stay. My phone kept buzzing too. Every few hours I'd get another text from that same unknown number. The messages were short, but they weren't threats. They were worse. Your thoughts can betray you. We know what you want. Don't resist. Each one was like a pinprick to the brain. Little reminders that I wasn't in control anymore. But I didn't answer. How could I? I didn't know who or what I was dealing with. The woman? The coffee shop? Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe it was all part of the same twisted game. And then, on the fourth night after I'd had that first taste of the brew, it got worse. Much worse. I woke around 2 a.m. to a sound that I couldn't place at first. A soft scraping like metal against wood. My heart leaped into my throat as I listened, straining my ears, hoping it was just a trick of the wind or a creak from the old pipes. But the sound came again, louder this time, more deliberate. Someone was inside my house. I sat up in bed, my pulse hammering against my chest, and grabbed my phone off the nightstand. I dialed 911, but the screen flickered, then died. No service, no signal. The scraping sound grew louder, closer. It was coming from the hallway. I swung my legs out of bed, my feet hitting the cold floor. I didn't know what I was going to do. Fight? Run? I couldn't think straight. All I knew was that something was in my house, and I had no way of calling for help. I grabbed the closest thing to a weapon, a baseball bat leaning against the corner of my room, and edged toward the door. My breathing was ragged, my body trembling. The closer I got, the more I realized that the scraping wasn't random. It was slow, steady, like someone was dragging something sharp along the walls. I pressed my ear to the door. The sound stopped. My heart pounded in the silence. I waited, holding my breath, trying to make sense of what was happening. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe none of this was real. But then the knob started to turn. Slowly, deliberately. I stepped back, raising the bat, my mind screaming at me to move, to run. But my legs felt like lead, rooted to the floor by terror. The door creaked open, revealing a sliver of darkness, and then nothing. I stared at the empty hallway, every nerve in my body on high alert. The shadows seemed deeper, more alive. The air felt colder, as if the temperature had dropped by several degrees in an instant. And that's when I saw it. A figure, tall, thin, with limbs too long, too distorted, slid out from the shadows, its face hidden in the gloom. But its eyes, its eyes. Black pits, just like the woman's. They stared straight through me, unblinking, as it crept forward, each step slow, deliberate, like it was savoring the moment. My stomach lurched. I stumbled back, swinging the bat wildly, but it never made contact. The thing was too fast. It ducked, moved, twisted, its movements unnaturally fluid, like it wasn't bound by the same rules of flesh and bone. It was playing with me. I backed into the corner of my room, heart racing, chest tight with panic. My breaths came in short gasps, and the room felt like it was closing in. The creature took another step forward, its long, spindly fingers reaching out toward me, nails scraping the floor. Then in the dim light from the street lamp outside, I saw its face. It wasn't the woman from the witch's brew. It was me. My own face stared back at me, twisted into a grotesque mockery of a smile, eyes hollow and dead. My reflection, but not. My lips moved, but no sound came out. The creature's mouth opened wider, a black abyss in the center of its face. And then it spoke. "We are your darkest thoughts." I dropped the bat, my whole body trembling with terror. The thing stepped closer, and I felt my skin crawl, like something was crawling beneath it, inside me. My own reflection, my own face, it was mocking me. My deepest fears, my ugliest desires, all staring back at me. The air thickened, the shadows pressing in from every corner of the room, and for a moment I thought I was going to pass out. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because in that moment I realized the truth. It wasn't just a curse. It wasn't the brew that was poisoning me, it was me. Every dark thought I'd ever had, every fleeting desire, every malicious whisper in the back of my mind, they weren't locked away anymore. The drink had unleashed them, and now they were real, alive, hunting me, waiting for me to slip up, to give in. The creature lunged, but I didn't scream. I couldn't. I didn't run. Instead, I did the only thing I could. I listened. Its rasping breath, the scrape of its nails on the floor, the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. It all blended together as the thing stood before me, hovering just inches away. And then, with a voice that sent ice down my spine, it whispered one final word: soon. The thing slithered back into the shadows, disappearing as suddenly as it had come, leaving me alone in the suffocating silence of my room. But I wasn't alone. Not anymore. Because now my darkest thoughts had a voice. And they were coming for me. The next morning, I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart still pounding in my chest. The room was quiet, the sunlight filtering in through the blinds. It felt like the first time I had really seen the sun in days. The events of the previous night rushed back to me in fragments, dark figures, eerie whispers, the thing wearing my face. But in the harsh light of day, they felt distant, like a bad dream. But it wasn't a dream. I knew that. I dragged myself out of bed, my body heavy with exhaustion, and made my way to the bathroom. As I stared at my reflection in the mirror, I half expected to see that twisted version of myself staring back at me. But no, it was just me, tired, pale, but still me. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to shake off the feeling that something was still watching, lurking just beyond my vision. That creature, that voice, it had said soon, like it was a promise, a warning. I couldn't live like this. I couldn't just wait for whatever was coming next. If I wanted to stop it, I had to face it. And I knew where I had to go. The Witch's Brew. Even though the shop had seemed abandoned the last time I went, I knew deep down it wasn't. There was something there, something tied to that cursed drink. If I was going to end this, I had to go back to where it all started. I threw on some clothes and left the house, barely pausing to lock the door behind me. The walk to the shop felt different this time, lighter somehow. The air was crisp, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot, and for the first time in days, I felt almost hopeful, like I had a chance to make this right. When I reached the corner where the Witch's Brew had been, I wasn't surprised to see the shop again. This time, the neon sign was glowing brighter, more vibrant, as if it was calling to me. The boarded-up windows were gone, replaced by dark glass that reflected the street outside. The door opened easily, the bell above it tinkling softly as I stepped inside. The smell hit me first, rich, earthy, and sweet. But this time, there was something comforting about it, like the smell of a warm kitchen on a cold day. The strange, damp atmosphere from before had lifted. It felt welcoming. And there, behind the counter, stood the woman. Her dark hair was still twisted in that familiar coil, and her eyes still had that depth to them, but there was something different in her expression. She didn't look threatening or ominous anymore. Instead, she looked expectant, like she had been waiting for me all along. "I've been expecting you," she said softly. I swallowed hard, feeling my throat tighten. "What did you do to me? Why did you make me drink that thing?" The woman's lips curled into a faint smile. "I didn't make you drink anything. You chose it, just like everyone else. But you didn't understand what you were choosing." I felt a wave of anger rise in my chest. "I didn't choose to have my darkest thoughts come to life." She shook her head gently, her eyes softening. "That brew didn't curse you. It revealed what was already inside. You see, the brew unlocks your hidden desires, yes, but it also unlocks your hidden strength." I blinked, confused. "Strength?" "The shadows that have haunted you," she continued, "they're manifestations of your fears, your regrets, your darkest self. But they're only as powerful as you let them be. The brew showed you what you were afraid to confront. It was never about punishment. It was about giving you the power to overcome." For a moment, I just stood there, trying to wrap my head around what she was saying. Could it really be that simple? That the terrifying visions, the creature that had stalked me, were just reflections of my own inner demons? "So what now?" I asked, my voice quieter now, less accusatory. The woman reached under the counter and pulled out another cup of the brew. This time it wasn't the swirling crimson liquid I'd seen before. It was a soft golden color, almost like honey. "This," she said, sliding it across the counter toward me, "will help you find balance, to accept the parts of yourself you've been running from, and to face them without fear." I hesitated for only a second before taking the cup. I lifted it to my lips and drank deeply. The warmth that spread through me was immediate, soothing. It felt like light filling every corner of my body, chasing away the shadows that had clung to me for so long. The air around me seemed to shimmer, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I felt whole. When I looked up again, the woman was watching me, her dark eyes glowing softly. "Your darkest thoughts," she said. "They don't define you. You have the power to choose what to listen to, what to give life to." I nodded, understanding finally sinking in. I thanked her quietly and turned to leave. As I stepped out into the street, the world felt different, brighter, cleaner. The weight on my chest had lifted, and for the first time in days, I could breathe freely. The gnawing feeling of being watched, of something lurking in the corners of my vision, was gone. I didn't look back as I walked home. I didn't need to. The creature, the thing that had stalked me in the dark, it wasn't coming back. I had faced it, and in doing so, I had taken its power away. As I reached my front door, I caught a glimpse of myself in the window. My reflection stared back at me, but this time it was just that, a reflection. My own face, no twisted grin, no hollow eyes. Just me, and for the first time in a long time, that was enough.